Hey everybody, welcome to DIVINESTROLOGY 2022. I'm Sara Wiseman and this is our annual forecast for the year ahead. Annual forecasts are a bit longer. A lot of you guys have been watching and reading the monthly forecast for quite some time now, which you can get at sarawiseman.com. But our annual forecast for 2022 is pretty lengthy. It covers a lot of emerging trends that are coming through. So if you do prefer to read it, which for some of you is faster, just go to sarawiseman.com, go to blog, you'll see DIVINESTROLOGY there, and you can sign up to get the monthly and annual updates from there on if you would like to do that. So 2022, it's a pretty big year, and it's big in a way that maybe we didn't expect. 2021 was all about kind of personal releasing, personal healing, letting go of sort of this big revelation and releasing of all of these toxic effects that were affecting us in our own lives. Now in 2022, we come to something a little different. Instead of the personal, it's more the global. So the micro always reflects the macro. And so in this cycle, we're moving to the big questions. And so I'm calling 2022 the year of collective reckoning. 2022 is a year of reckoning, of settling what has come due. Just like a bill that demands payment, in 2022, we come to terms with the debts we have accrued. These are karmic debts, and yet, even though they're karmic, they still relate to money, power, authority, and resources, and they've been centuries in the making. So this year, we begin the process of paying back and setting to rights everything that has gone askew for a long time. In terms of our collective evolution, 2022 is a landmark year in which we kind of show up and we own up and we take responsibility for our past mistakes. So as we're just at this early part of the age of Aquarius, we're finally beginning, we're not beginning to evolve, but we're taking the next step in our evolution, which is exciting. So a 6 year, in numerology, 2022 is a 6 year, and a 6 year relates to home, haven, domesticity, and home. This home also relates to family, like the deeper threads of ancestry and karma. So home, as we've seen in the last couple years, relates to staying home. Working from home, staying closer to home, not traveling like we used to. And yes, definitely in 2022, there's much more of that. That's kind of the reality. However, the bigger focus, the bigger picture we're being called to look at is our collective home, which is Gaia, planet Earth. In 2022, the question is, how do we care for the Earth, our collective home? Astrologers, if you guys follow astrology, I'm not an astrologer, but I do follow astrology. And for those of you who follow astrology, you know 2022, one of the big things that's happening is that Pluto returns in the US, the American chart. So Pluto is a slow-moving planet that cycles about every 248 years. So the last time Pluto was in the US chart was when the US began around 1776, which was the birth of the nation. So not surprisingly, more was going on. This was also the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and this brought massive changes in manufacturing and labor. And it was also the beginning of the Age of Enlightenment. And this is a European system of belief that centered around the idea of reason, rational thinking as the prime source of authority, and held ideals such as liberty, constitutional government, and the separation of church and state. So as Pluto returns to the US chart, we're going to revisit these ideas working with what we know now. So this means the US government is going to have some reform, the same way it did as in 1776. So how does that look? Do we separate into region nations or shift to a new style of coalition government or have another attempted coup or something else? That's kind of what Pluto is going to bring. I've been looking into this, and my feeling is that it's a different style of government, that moving toward a different style. That's what I'm seeing. So does this mean the US will have another economic revolution as we did back then with new ways of manufacturing and distribution? So this is going to recycle. So do we follow Amazon's lead, or do we go local and green, or do supply chains break down, or something else? And I'm going to talk a little bit more down below about supply shortages, which will be one of the ways, and going green, which will be two of the ways this comes about. And then the other question, how do we possibly deal with wage inequality and wages people can't live on, and the labor shortage, and what bigger change or bigger trend is that actually leading us toward? Because nothing happens in a vacuum, and these big changes in the workforce are dramatic for the US. So that's going to bring about some evolution. It also means the US refreshes old ideas about authority, fraternity, government, and church. So do we move away from the patriarchy, the system of haves and haves not, separation instead of inclusion, rationality instead of intuition? And do we move toward a new way of living that is spiritual, matriarchal, collaborative, cooperative, and inclusive? And we would hope so. More room for everybody in those types of systems. Next, we have 2022 is about eco-reckoning. We are called to reckon our ecological position. So our 6th year is the collective reckoning of our home, Gaia. Nature has warned us, and we finally begin to take the warning seriously. Yet we're very late to the party, aren't we? But late or not, eco-consciousness is the new political and corporate trend. And this isn't just for image anymore, like it used to be. It's actually finally making sense for government and business to create eco-conscious systems. So we start rolling up our sleeves and beginning the cleanup of our collective home, Gaia. And again, it's not recycling and reusing. Those help, but these are about big legislation, law, international agreements. We come to collective reckoning, not just the US, for those of you there, but the whole world. And we see the bill that must be paid, and we take steps to correct and settle our centuries of misuse and abuse of the planet. So here's something that I've been seeing for a while, and it's just interesting. Everything changes all the time. So none of this is about fear, but leadership changes. So global leadership shifts are rapid, and they happen early in 2022. So some key world leaders leave the planet, and this could be from accidents, illness, or age. And what this does actually is sort of impacts our sense of who's in charge, like who are the adults in charge, because it's different. The queen retires her crown, whether that's through her choice or through her passing or other reasons, and then the subsequent UK leadership cycles several times. They have a little trouble figuring out what's going to be best for that country. And US leadership also is going to cycle. One thing, there is no return to the previous players who were so active in the old patriarchal systems. They don't come back. They've become irrelevant. We've become bored of them. We see the dead end, full stop nature of those systems. And so instead, younger people show up to fill big roles. And some of these people may be surprising. In other parts of the world, even as authoritarian regimes cling to power, they're also losing relevance. And it's sort of, again, this idea of we're bored, we see through it. The emperor has no clothes. We're not following anymore. So archaic political systems are no match for this infusion of ideas that the internet brings. When people see freedom as possible, they pull down the walls of oppression. This is just the cycle of humanity at work. When we take a look at our maps and borders and dividing lines and even our languages, how many centuries ago were these created? So our laws, our legislation, our banking, our taxation, what's viable now? What makes sense now? Existing power structures no longer make sense to the late boomers, the millennials, the Gen Z, and the Gen X. And these are the people who are actually holding power now. So if no one participates in the old system, how does that system survive? It doesn't. It gives way to change, which is, of course, our unchanging companion. So across the globe, we're starting to see in 2022 the early sparks of new collaborative coalition-style government. And that means multiple diverse voices leading in cooperative alliance. Many people hate this. Many people love this. And in 2020, the resulting chaos ensues. We don't make the transition fully. This is where we're going. And there's a lot of fighting and squabbling about this shift. Nobody in power wants to lose power. Nobody out of power wants to accept the old systems. COVID continues. So COVID's a part of our life for several more years. And just a reminder that we never return to normal. The new normal is not the old normal. We never return to how things were. That passage of time no longer exists. So it's something to grieve, and it's also something to accept. And we live differently now, and we have all changed dramatically from our experience. Masks, mutations, vax wars, all of this continues. And in some ways, COVID is the World War III of our time. We're having multiple years of sacrifice, suffering, loss, sorrow. Again, we're not the same people we were in 2020. This experience, traumatic as it has been, has helped us deepen and grow. Let's see, the nuts and bolts of how the year will go. There will be supply disruptions. And remembering when you got everything from Amazon delivered right to your door. Remember when Costco, the shelves were completely full, or not specifically them, but any big organization. So these days are leaving. In 2022, we start to notice that supply chains are disrupted. And honestly, this is not a bad thing. We actually do not need every little thing delivered to us at every single moment. Some of the things of hoarding, shopping addiction, over-consumerism, personal debt, and waste, we're just moving away from that. We are forced to reckon with our hyper-materialism and the pain it causes across the globe. Food inequality. This is very tough. There will be food shortages and famine in 2022. Now, it may not be for you listening now, but parts of the world will be obese, parts of the world will be starving. So how do we address this as one soul? This year, 2022, many souls will leave and reincarnate due to food inequality. And this is something we need to settle. Along with that, we have dietary change, and this has been building for a while, but it's reaching it's here now. Like processed foods out, meat, animal products, dairy out, alcohol out, sugar, we see it as a drug finally. So when there's no more got milk, when got milk changes to got alt milk, when it's not where's the beef, but it's where's the quinoa. So when you have significant populations, again, late boomer, Gen X, Gen Z, rejecting these old ways of eating, the meat and potatoes style, or the fast food style, or the processed food style, this affects food production, manufacturing, distribution, marketing, plant-based, meat-free, alcohol alternatives like mocktails, organic, grow your own, container gardens, food co-ops, community boxes, indoor food gardens, hanging gardens. And so you name it, this is the new food. This is where we're heading. And again, this affects everybody. If nobody's drinking dairy milk, that affects all the way back to the supply chain for dairy farmers. What happens then? Fading religion. So people continue to stream away from the religions they were raised in. And this is part of the Pew report has come out with, I think it's 70% of people are shifting. So what people are going to is they are seeking a personal spiritual practice of their own. So organized religion is giving way to a new kind of, you might call it a global animism, which is a way of thinking about the world where everything has a soul or consciousness and everything is part of collective consciousness. In just a few generations, this new personal spirituality will become predominant. And this is even now as we see the rise of some particular very strong religious groups, even as they seem to be predominant, this is actually fading away slowly. People are becoming more independent. They are not needing the hierarchy to provide their spiritual support. It's all about learning to create your own direct connection with the universe in all the ways this is possible. And in line with this, we've got a little, in 2022, a little faux spirituality starting to happen. I mean, it's been happening for a while, but when you're truly in direct connection, you don't need any props or apps or any kind of structure or system. So as spirituality begins to spark, it takes a while for people to understand what's real and what's marketing. So in 2022, we're bombarded with faux spirituality, and this is no different than all the other things we've been sold all over the years. So this is a cautionary tale to anybody who is new to non-religious personal spirituality. Attend to your own direct connection, and the universe will take care of the rest for you. Okay, we got a lot more actually. So now is a good time if you want to stop the recording, take a break, stretch, and we'll move along. So healing plants. So this is a beginning piece, a thread that's starting or a strand that's starting. Healing plants. In a lot of my students and I work on future life meditations, which are very interesting, a lot of fun, and we continually see plants, revered and protected and cared for as these kind of gems of the earth. And plants are used for medicine and nutrition in these future visions. So this healing that we've been waiting for, all the things we seek in medicine and nutrition and psychological mental health healing, everything exists. So we are learning to protect this and recognize it. As part of this, we still continue with climate chaos in 2022. It's a year of reckoning. It's not a year of all solutions put into place. So we have many climate debts that have not yet been paid. It's here. Oceans rise, land is displaced, and we move from the coast because we have to. Water rights become a huge moral issue, not just a business issue. Fires continue to burn without control until they burn themselves out. Earthquakes and eruptions and storms continue to disrupt us. The planet is reflecting our consciousness because all consciousness is one. During this year of reckoning, we pay our debt, we begin to pay our debt, and things begin to calm down over time. Let's see, spiritual self-care. This is a very positive trend. So everybody is in therapy or recovery, doing self-care. We're starting to understand trauma. We're learning how to deal with addiction and abuse and PTSD. And we're starting to have some new systems like microdosing, plant medicine, forest bathing, nature immersion, music, sound healing, meditation, relaxation, healing touch, dreaming, sleep, ecstatic states, peak experiences. And they're all making our way into our toolkit for emotional wellness. So it's kind of like Freud and old psychology kind of we've shifted away. We're doing this very holistic spiritual approach, and we're understanding that for most people it's working better. We're understanding that every psychological condition has a spiritual root. It may have a physical or chemical root too, but there's always a spiritual root. And if we can go to that root, we can create a lot of releasing that helps us. Always, we are healing through inclusion, acceptance, compassion, and kindness. So this is a very big trend. Mental and emotional health, self-care, spirituality as personal practice, all of these things are astounding shifts from years past. Fluid gender. So, in a couple years, we'll be like, remember when we thought the earth was flat? And starting in 2022, I mean, this has been building for a while, but non-binary becomes a non-issue. The last bastion of the old structures, including fixed gender roles, they've had their day. We're at the start of the Aquarian age, and old rules and roles are no longer needed, especially in younger generations. Gen X, Gen Z, it just like doesn't apply. There's nothing set in stone, and this is remarkably freeing for not only anyone who doesn't conform to the old structures, but like to everyone. This freedom of one becomes freedom for all. Similar to this, ethnic integration. So as we know, world demographics are shifting. We have borders open or closed, climate shift, and these are places where people are migrating. Birth rates are declining rapidly in some areas, and they're stable in others, but this is shifting this global demographic. The reign of the white European world is waning. It's on a couple more generations, it won't even be a thing. So ethnic integration continues, and we have to come to a reckoning on these old ideas of racism. We're several centuries, maybe even more, too late. So is an ancestral culture to be celebrated or denounced? What does this new world look like? What language is predominant? what cultural things are carried forward and what are let go. So remembering there's only one human race, and like it or not, we are one tribe. Okay, some other good things, some fun things actually. Medical breakthroughs. And I was surprised to receive this in meditation, but it was really clear. There's some remarkable breakthroughs. And thanks to the way we pushed through getting COVID vaccines so quickly, the industry is sort of accelerated. So we've got new drugs and cures even for some of the specifics I got were HIV, immune diseases, cancer, diabetes, and interestingly, weight loss. So watch for that stuff to come on the market perhaps later in the year. There's some remarkable new announcements coming. Transportation breakthroughs. This is a little further down the road. We all know we're going to electric, but there's also solar cars and bikes, and pretty soon, and I just see this continually, we're going to have these flight orbs or flight pods or something like that. Gas is like this thing we used to use over time. Again, not in 2022, we're not there yet, but we're shifting to this place. So what happens, when we're no longer relying on gas or even in natural gas? And again, the suppliers don't have the demand, and so the world political structure shifts again. All these things, there's no separation, all interconnected. Energy sources, solar, hydro, wind, yes, all of these. And what's key is that money is finally put into developing new non-polluting energy sources. In a few years, not 2022, but a little bit further down the line, we're going to have this question, why did we wait? What possible reason did we think it would be a good idea to keep using these old polluting systems? It's just like, why? But we did wait because of, the political system. And, here we are now, but we're still going to figure it out. So what I see is crystal as a power source. And I keep looking at this and checking it. It's not a New Age superstition. It's something about the way crystal holds light in a dense way, and we learn to use this. I'm not a scientist. I just understand what I see and what others have seen when we do these meditations, crystals and rods. So anyway, we're on the way. And just as when the first car and the first airplane, were invented, or the first light bulb, or all these things, there were a lot of false starts. We're going to have a lot of false starts. So wait for it. It's coming. And finally, and this is what I find the most exciting, and it's actually not here in 2022, but we are seeing the spark of it, or seeing the impetus beginning. Electronica, all the devices and apps and cryptocurrency and everything related to that world. So that's all as changeable as fashion. So there's new trends every season. Skinny jeans, bootcut jeans, joggers, what's the next thing? But nothing lasts for long. So in 2022, nothing we're using now kind of sticks around. Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, there's so many other things, the different cyber currencies, nothing really catches and holds, because it's been created a little bit more for entertainment or quick distraction, but we're starting to get bored of that. It's like, what am I looking at? How is this meaningful? I want something more. So we are seeking real answers and real systems, not distracting entertainment. And that's a big claim, because as humans, we love distracting entertainment, but we're starting to want something that works better. And so pretty soon, not yet, but when we get to this place where holograms, particulate imaging, beamed reality, these are the names I'm giving to what I'm seeing, which is like a dense particulate image that can be transferred. It's not materializing, like thank you, Star Trek. It's actually just the image, but this image is easily available to be moved into different places. And it creates alternate reality in your own environment in a different way. So this changes everything. And this is different than AI, which I haven't even really covered a lot. It did not even show up as a big deal for 2022. I think we may be a little farther along, but this idea of hologram or particulate imaging, when it comes, everything changes. And this is just a couple years away. And the way to think about this is like we remember when cell phones, well, first we had those giant mobile phones, then we had cell phones, and then smartphones. And once smartphones came, you know, like in 10 years, the world was completely different. How we banked, how we found ourselves on maps, how we communicated, how we shopped, everything changed. And so with this new electronica, when it arrives, which is not yet, but in a couple of years, we begin to evolve at light speed. 2022 is a year where we take responsibility, we grow up, we work together collectively, and it's a year of reckoning, and this is really the most necessary and best thing we can do as ever evolving humans. If you'd like to get the text for Divine Astrology, again, go to sarawiseman.com, go to blogs. You can sign up there to receive Divine Astrology every month and check out the rest. There's so many resources on psychic development and spirituality. And would love for you to be able to explore some of those and see what interests you. I'm Sara Wiseman, and wishing you a beautiful new year, and thank you for listening.